2023, everybody. It has been a while since I have chatted with you. Apologies for that, but doing Vlogmas was more involved, intense than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was just going to take little clips of my day and of Nora's day and compile them all together and it would be easy peasy. And it wasn't. It was not easy peasy, but I enjoyed that process so much, and I really love having those videos for years to come where I can kind of watch Nora first discovering Santa Claus and all of those things. Like, it's definitely worth doing, but I needed a little bit of a break. And that is why you have not seen me in a little while. But I am here, I'm back, I'm ready. I wanted to wait until I was fully ready to come and sit down with you. And the first video I'm sitting down with you to chat about is a big, huge wrap up. I thought before we dive into 2023, like, we've got some stuff we need to sort up, wrap up for 2022. So the first one is going to be a wrap up, of course, of November and December. And then I'm going to do my favorite books of 2022. And maybe worst books of 2022. That always puts me in a foul mood though, so we'll see what happens with that. But today I thought I would sit down. I've got a new tripod. Barry bought me one for Christmas and I am so grateful because my old tripod, like, you were hanging on by a thread. Let me just say that. You were precariously placed on a little dinky tripod, and it's amazing that I filmed anything in the last couple of years with that thing. So today we're here, fresh-faced, ready to go, chat about last year. I decided I'm going to change up my wrap-ups a little bit, if you don't mind. I've always done kind of random things where I would talk, 5 stars to 1 star and that kind of thing. But now I have categories and I wanted to share them with you. I'm going to share with you in every wrap up the vile books that I read, the tolerable books, splendid books that I've read, and the favorite. And with the favorite, there can only be one of the month. So here we go. I thought I would just apply it to my 2022 November, December books that I read. Let's start with November, shall we? Because it's been a while. And we're going to be talking about the vile books I read in November. Now, we are starting off controversially because I really did not like this book, and it is like a beloved book. And I think it was a situation where it just wasn't for me. And that was Women Talking by Miriam Toews, or, oh God, I always say it wrong. Toews. You guys have corrected me a million times, and I'm so sorry. You'll have to do it again. Now, the premise of this book is incredible and sadly a true story. This follows a Mennonite community in Canada in which women were being drugged and raped in their beds while they slept. Women and sadly quite young girls as well. That's Winnie in the background with her new Christmas toy, her little lamb. The premise is incredible. We follow a group of women in this community who are gathering together in the barn to talk about what is going on. The men are away and they're trying to figure out if they're going to stay or if they're going to leave. And I love the premise of this. I think her writing is very good. However, I was just infuriated and frustrated reading it. And I probably think the reason for that is that she took her time and learned about the way people speak in the Mennonite community and how they use language and parables and all of these things. I just found it frustrating and I felt confused a lot of the time. Now, this might, and probably is, just a me thing. I just didn't get it. Is it truly vile? Probably not. But for me, it just didn't work for me, and I was like kind of ready for the book to be over. When the book was over, I was actually very ready. Moving on to the tolerable books. These are books that were just fine. Like, nothing to write home about. Were good. Would I read them again? No, I wouldn't. But the first book I have to share with you is a Susan Meissner book. And now you guys know, if you've been on this channel for a while, I adore Susan Meissner. Will read anything she's ever written. This is the last year of the war, and we follow two girls during World War II and after World War II. When they are essentially teenagers, their parents and themselves are put into internment camps, essentially, in America. So we follow a Japanese girl, and we also follow a German girl. And for whatever reason, the government has decided that these people are dangerous and need to be put into internment camps. And we all know that there's huge red flags and issues surrounding the internment camps that were created in the US. So we follow these girls, and we follow when they are over the course of a summer, and when they are separated, and that period of time where they are missing one another and haven't spoken for years. And we follow this German girl, Elise, as she is older and is actually suffering from dementia, and like early onset dementia, I believe. And she is, oh my God, I just looked down, and Winnie has already torn this lamb apart. I just don't understand. There are no toys that this dog will not rip apart. In any case, we're going on because she's just gonna do her thing anyway. I'm resigned to my crazy dog. So we follow Elise when she's dealing with dementia, and she is missing her friend, and she wants to see her friend before she passes, essentially. And so she's trying to find her. So it kind of goes back and forwards in time. I did enjoy it. I will say it was perfectly fine. It felt a little bit YA, and maybe that's just because we're following teens. But there was something young adult about this book that I don't know if it was intended to be a YA book, but it wasn't as deep as some of her other books. And I missed some of that. So it was perfectly fine. I actually think my mom would like this book. In any case, The Last Year of the War, would recommend, but, you know, probably not where I would recommend to start with Susan Meissner. Another tolerable book, I feel a bit guilty even claiming is tolerable because it is based on a real life situation. It's really hard with like biographies and autobiographies for sure. It's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I mean, this book changed psychology. It was an incredibly important book to so many people. Viktor Frankl survived a concentration camp, at least one concentration camp during World War II. And while he was in the concentration camp as a psychologist, he was kind of witnessing how people who were essentially imprisoned dealt with the imprisonment, and how some were able to keep hope and some just couldn't. And that was interesting. However, it felt like it was written for the psychology community, and that's what I struggled with. Like, he has like philosophies and stuff of his own, and ways that he applies things to life, but it felt like he was trying to talk to other psychologists, and I'm not a psychologist. I don't know anything. And so there was a lot of moments where I was like, but what is the purpose of this book? Because everyone talks about it. And I guess maybe I just missed that. That said, this man, you know, suffered horribly, and also survived amazing things, terrible things, but he survived and lived to tell the tale, and turned his, you know, very difficult experience during World War II into something very beautiful. So I can't knock it. I just felt confused while I was reading it, and therefore at the time it was just kind of tolerable reading it. Okay, and the last tolerable book I have for you is Lady Osbaldiston's Christmas Intrigue. I have been listening to this little series. They're all Christmassy books, and it follows Lady Osbaldiston, who is a wealthy woman living in the, I think it's the 1700s or something along those lines, maybe the 1800s. I can't remember, and it doesn't really matter. It is that time period in the past, historical fiction, and she is a very wise woman and has her grandchildren around her every Christmas leading up to Christmas, and her grandchildren get into mischief at times, and then she learns to like put them onto a task and just solve some sort of mystery that's going on in the community. And I enjoyed this one. It's, I think, the last in the series. It's just a lovely little book to read, but it's not nothing to write home about. It's not insanely well written. There's always a happy ending, but sometimes you want just a happy ending when you're reading a Christmas book. And I love a historical fiction Christmas book. I really love that. So it was just what I needed at the time in November. Moving on to the Splendid books that I read in November. And the first is the Hacienda. I think I might have vlogged my way through this. Did I? I can't remember anymore. I think I might have done a reading vlog for this. I really enjoyed this book. This is a ghost story. It follows a woman who's living in Mexico at a time where there's kind of civil unrest and a great overthrow of the government. Now, her dad was a part of the government that was overthrown. His life was ended due to this overthrow of the government. And she and her future is very much up in the air, and she decides to marry a man quite suddenly. She doesn't know him. He is part of the new government, and she moves to his home, the Hacienda. And as soon as she gets there, terrible things start happening. She knows immediately that something is wrong with this house, but because she's trying to make a name for herself, a new future for herself, she stays and stays and stays, and it's almost like digging her heels in the ground. I will have a good future. This house, nothing is going to get in between me and this good future. And so she does reach out to a priest, I believe, who helps her through it. It was scary at times. It was so much fun to read this. Like, I was just turning the pages, just loving this book. I really, really liked it. I thought it was very, very good. The writing was so-so. There wasn't a lot of reflection, I will say. She, as a character, didn't have as much reflection as I would have liked. There was not really time to pause between scary event and other scary events. It was just go, go, go. So sometimes I think that can be a bad thing, but I still liked it. Oh, Winnie, you're knocking over the... Oh my word, this dog. It was good. I recommend it. Another Splendid reread from me was A Christmas Carol. So Barry and I, in November, we decided to go to Stowe, Vermont, honestly, just for like one overnight. It was not long. We told my parents we were going to Montreal. They took care of Nora overnight, and we actually went to Stowe. My dad turned 70, and so we went to Stowe to go and get his favorite beer, which is Heady Topper. If anyone is ever in Stowe, go and grab yourself a Heady Topper or a Focal Banger. He loves it. And so that's what we decided to do for his 70th. We did have a surprise party for him, but in any case, we decided to go, and it was so lovely. And while we were driving up and driving back, we listened to A Christmas Carol, and it was just what the doctor ordered. I will say that we consume the Christmas Carol so many times throughout the month of December and November. Like Nora loves the Disney Christmas Carol. We watch like different renditions of the Christmas Carol. It's very much a story that is very alive and well in the Borgall household, and yet we still needed to listen to it on the drive up and on the drive back, and it was absolutely wonderful. I honestly could read that every single year and be a very happy girl. So highly recommend. If you haven't read the Christmas Carol and you've only experienced it in the movies and stuff, like those are wonderful, but there is something so divine and lovely about the book. So highly recommend. The last Splendid book I have for you is 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. Now this is the book that I picked up and put down on my Kobo many a time through the year. It was a book that I really wanted to get done, and I did. I did it. And 9 Lives follows 9 people who receive simply a list of names. They don't know where the list came from. They don't know who wrote the list. They seem to have nothing to do with one another. And yet they're all on this list. And unfortunately for them, terrible things start happening to the people on the list. Now, we follow, I believe, an FBI agent who's on the list. We follow everyone on the list and their perspective. So if you don't like multiple POV, like, ooh, it would be a little bit difficult. I enjoyed it quite a lot. And this definitely made me think I need to pick up more Peter Swanson, because every book I've read from him has been riveting and dark and disturbing, and I really liked it. And now we get to the favorite book that I read in November was Ingrids War. Now this is a biography, a very difficult biography for the writer to write, because she had a kind of strained, awkward relationship with her grandmother. She had always thought her grandmother was quite cold and distant and all of these things, but she knew very little about her grandmother's past. She knew that her grandmother and I guess her great-grandparents left Germany at the very end of World War II. The family didn't talk about the war, really nothing. She knew that her grandmother had her mother as kind of a single woman. And suddenly she starts to pull things out of her grandmother as her grandmother is getting older. And this woman had quite the life. Now, this does not shy away from the fact that this woman was a German citizen during World War II, you know, knew some of what was going on, but not absolutely everything. And it dives into that and into her situation being a single woman pregnant. And it was just fascinating. And it truly is also about family and strained relationships and you know, trying to patch those. And I really loved it. I hope that more people read Ingrids War. I listened to it on audio. Very, very good. And now it's time for December, guys. The Vial. I have 2 books, sadly, for you that I really didn't like. This first one I really didn't like at all. And it's Almost Everything, Notes on Hope by Anne Lamott, I think her name is. I listened to this on audio, and this is kind of a self-helpy book, but Anne Lamott narrated it herself, and I hope she never watches this, because I feel guilty to say I really struggled with the audio. She has a very monotone voice, and this is supposed to be like an uplifting stuff, right? Like, this is uplifting, it's about hope. And yet the whole time I was like, how is she talking like this in this monotone voice? And who let her narrate her own audiobook with that voice? Like, I don't understand why publishers allow that when the voice is bad. Sometimes you just don't have a good voice. You know, sometimes you can't bring the reader in, and it would be better to let this book be given to someone who can pull out the inflections and all of those things. It was missing, and I will never read another Anne Lamott, I'm sorry to say, because I will have her voice in my head. Even if I read it now, like on paper, I will just have her voice in my head. I can never have her voice in my head again. And so for me, it was vile. The other vile book that I read in December was In a Holidays by Kristen Lawrence. So this is another situation where I thought, you know what, it's Christmas time. Maybe I do have a heart. Maybe it'll be all okay and I can read a romance. No, I can't. April, future April, you don't like romance books, okay? You just don't. You hate every second of it. And this book was no different. In a Holidays follows a woman who goes to this cottage where she sees family and family friends that she's known since she was a little kid. And she's not doing well in her life. She has this huge crush on one of her family friends' kids, and it's about that. Now, we follow her leaving the cottage, and then all of a sudden there's a car crash or something, and they are brought back to the beginning of the holiday. So that's where the days comes in, because she has to repeat the holiday until she finds true love, essentially. It was very annoying. They as a group of people, every day of their little holiday, they would do something different. Like, okay, we're gonna have a competition for like snowman building or whatever. And the whole time I was like, really? You got 20-something, early 20-something people, all of them, to joyously get together and have this competition? I just felt like somebody would have been snippy about it, right? Somebody would have been like, I don't want to do it. Or it felt too picture perfect, and the characters didn't feel real to me because of these things. And the love interest kind of drove me nuts because he was way too good to be true. And no. I didn't like it, guys. I didn't like it. Note to self, no more romance. Moving on to the tolerable, and now I don't even know if this should be on the tolerable because I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't perfect writing, and maybe that's why, but this is kind of like tolerable to Splendid. Kind of in between there, but that doesn't exist. So that's The Mystery of Mrs Christie by Marie Benedict. I'm really excited to read more by her because I liked her writing style. The story felt a little bit slow at times, but this is about those 11 days that Agatha Christie went missing in December. No one could find her. Everyone was looking for her. And as a result, all eyes pointed to her husband, Mr. Christie. They seem to be having a terrible time in their marriage. And it follows Agatha Christie prior to meeting her husband and during their courting and like early on in their relationship. And then they follows Mr. Christie after his wife goes missing and during those 11 days. And I enjoyed it. There was something very Gone Girl about this, which I appreciated because it was kind of nice to have a Gone Girl in the, 1920s? 1926. And I've always been so curious about what happened to Agatha Christie in those 11 days. And we'll never really know. But I loved the idea of what happened in this. Like, so good. So no, I don't think this should be in the tolerable at all. I think it should be in the Splendid. Why did I put it in the tolerable? All right, it's added to the Splendid. We're going to talk more about Splendid books now. Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. This was incredible. So this author looked at moments of depression in her own life and kind of turned it into something beautiful. So she speaks about how, you know, society has this like, get up and go, dust yourself off, pick yourself up, move on when you're feeling low. And she says, no, we should all stop when we're feeling that way and recognize that our bodies, our souls, our minds are telling us to rest. So she looks to winter as essentially inspiration for this. And she looks to nature and what happens to nature during the winter to encourage that rejuvenation by resting. And it was beautiful. And I bought it for one of my bosses who I knew would like it. So yeah, I highly recommend this. She's coming out with a new book, I think mid-ish this year, and I'll definitely be reading it because it was gorgeous. Next is The Animals at Lockwood Manor by Jane Healey. This was indeed so splendid. This follows a woman named Hetty. It's 1939. She is in charge of the artifacts at the Natural History Museum. They are moving the animals, essentially the stuffed animals, from the museum to the English countryside during the war because they know bombs are going to be dropping on London. They don't want anything to be damaged. So they move everything to safety. Unfortunately, Hetty has landed at a place called Lockwood Manor. And Mr. Lockwood is not a very lovely man who owns the manor. His daughter, however, is quite lovely and they get on very well. I loved the storyline between these two women. It's like a queer romance and I was so here for it. See, it's weird because maybe I just need romance in different contexts. Anyway, I have a heart. It's just not very big. So anyway, but it honestly was quite terrifying because things would happen in the night at Lockwood Manor and suddenly an animal would move from one location to another location. Very terrifying. Mr. Lockwood himself was such a brooding, misogynistic man that I was quite scared of him throughout the whole book. But these characters came to life and I loved these women so, so much. I just can't say enough good things about this book and I definitely want to read more by her. I have the Ophelia Girls on my Kobo, so maybe I'll read that this year. And next up in the Splendid is the Amulet of Samarkand. This is the Bartimaeus Trilogy, although there are 4 books in the series. The 4th must be an offshoot. In any case, it is like a YA, maybe children's middle grade book series that I have thoroughly enjoyed. It's written by Jonathan Strout. He wrote another series that I loved, starting with The Screaming Staircase. So good. I really like his writing and I'll read anything by him at this point. This series follows a genie who is very much at the whim and will of magicians who call him forth. And his name is Bartimaeus. He is hilarious. I love him so much. And in this book, we follow Bartimaeus, who is helping a magician, a young magician, who's trying to get some revenge for poor behavior of other magicians. And it's so much fun. I'm thoroughly enjoying the whole series. Honestly, I'm on the 3rd book right now, and then I'll read the 4th and it'll be done. But I'm loving this series. Last for the Splendid is the Book of Delights by Ross Gay. This was just a treat. I have been following Anne Patchett and her bookstore on Instagram and also on TikTok, and she recommends books. And one of the books that she recommended around Christmas time was the Book of Delights. And I can understand why. It is truly Black joy. And that's one of the things that I love about it. And one of the things that he loves about it, he's talking about how, you know, it's so important to focus on Black joy, and that in itself is a delight. And he just talks about the world and things that delight him in the world. There's a lot speaking to gardening in here. He loves to garden, and a lot about his wife in here and his friends. And it was just truly a joy and a delight. So I highly recommend reading this if you need a little pick-me-up and a way to like look at the world in a more positive way. This is such a lovely, lovely read. And now we get to the favorite. My favorite book of December was easily The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. I love Michelle Obama. I actually have her on my like 2023 vision board. I just look up to her so much, and I want to try to tap into the way that she looks at life a little bit more in my own life. And she essentially in this book is giving her wisdom, that, you know, her life wisdom, what she has gone through in her life and how she approaches life. There's a whole section in here about how her mom raised her. She said that she actually wanted her mom to write a book, but her mom said, why would anyone want to read that, even though a ton of people would? And so she was like, well, that's fine, but I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to write a chapter kind of together. And I wrote notes. And during, while I was listening to this on audio, which by the way is narrated by Michelle Obama, who's fantastic. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. This is a kind of book that I definitely should have on my shelves, which I don't, sadly, but I will one day. Those are all of the books that I read in November and December. The Vial, the favorites, so many good books for the most part. I feel like I had really good reading months. So let me know in the comments below, what was the favorite book that you read in November and your favorite book of December? I would love to know what that is. Let me know if you like this whole concept for the wrap up. I think it's fun and a different way of viewing the books a little bit. I will chat with you extremely soon to talk about my favorite books of 2022. See you soon. Bye.